Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and I can hear the bumper in the background, so I know that we are on air. We're accompanied by Michael Connolly, attorney for the U.S. Justice Foundation. We want to dissect the foolishness of what's going on the border. Luckily, yesterday, we played the clip by Governor Perry of Texas. And there's several interesting things. I read an article forwarded to me by one of our great news hounds out there. C. Smittle is the email that always is sent to me. All kinds of emails every day. Sometimes there's a little hiatus when I think C. Smittle was on vacation, but he's a news hound gathering and sending me information. One of them is, of course, that our laws in America are that if you have a refugee that's an unaccompanied minor, they don't qualify as a refugee. They have to have their parent. And I really don't see the reason why we wouldn't accept them as a refugee if the parent was there, number one. We have to also delve into why we have reports that we've checked through our sources that, in fact, CIA operatives are killing native males in Guatemala, which is driving these women to run from their homeland, literally native homelands in Guatemala, and head to the border. And they're also getting news reports on radio and television in Guatemala, Nicaragua, and other Central American countries, which is also timed. And 6 months before this crisis, there were literally reports out by the U.S. bureaucracy and federal government hiring people for the crisis that was going to come. So you know that the U.S. government had to contact the Mexican government to get a 72-hour permission, which they never would in the past, to allow people to get encampments by the train tracks and then to get on the death train. I personally think if you had refugees, send them an air-conditioned bus. But we don't want young teenagers with MS-13 or gang affiliations that are coming across the border, either running drugs or joining gangs or killing homeless people, which has already happened, as Michael Connolly pointed out to me before the break. We have a real crisis on our hands that I think Obama's laying the groundwork for martial law because he knows that he's slipping from power. He knows that the only way to stop it is to have no 2016 election or to have a state of martial law or to completely trash the United States and make sure that the United Nations sets the stage for whatever we do, including these new treaties they've signed with Europe, so that basically our Congress and Senate become vestigial, and there's no rule of law. It's rule of bureaucracy and fascism, which is a fusion of government and corporate takeover of the whole country in every way, shape, or form. It's just a form of not even legal jurisprudence. It's a form of administrative rule by fiat by these corporations and their functionary bureaucrats. It's really sickening. And the fact that the United Nations gets their hind up in the air saying that we might be in conflict with UN international law makes me ill. I really think that, yes, if you have refugees, why aren't the parents there? I don't have a problem with refugees, but I do have a problem with 16 or 17-year-olds with MS-13 tattoos, that they're criminals and they have no business being here and they need to be sent to their Guatemalan or Nicaraguan embassy and they need to be deported out of the country forthwith. If we have a problem in these countries, maybe we can contact them and say we can help clean those rat's nest of their criminal elements and their drug gangs, and we can do that very efficiently. We're good at cleaning out and killing people, and when we need to, and we need to stop the idea of policing nations like Iraq. We made major mistakes there. I just think the way that Obama is running the country, he's trying to run it into the ground and break it up, just like the Hunger Games. He's trying to become the last president.
Well, he's heading in that direction, certainly, and the immigration crisis, well, I don't call it immigration. This is just illegals coming across our border, and yes, a lot of them are children, but that doesn't make them less of an illegal. And right. We had a small victory yesterday. I wrote an article on my blog at Michael Connolly, CONNELLY.JIGSY.com back on July 10th, and I encouraged at that point the governors of the border states to invoke their powers under Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution, and to use the National Guard to close the border. Well, this shows the power of the people that still exist in this country. This thing received 15,000 hits on my views on my website within the last 11 days. Wow. People started contacting me saying that they were calling their representatives, they were calling the governor's office in the state of Texas. They were trying to get something done. Yesterday it paid off. Governor Perry ordered 1,000 members of the National Guard, Texas National Guard, to the border. So this is something that can be done if the American people start putting the pressure on. And I think that this is all blowing up in Obama's face to a certain extent because of the fact that most people believe that the border should be protected. Now, we have to think about this. Not only do we have illegals coming in, children and waves of adults, but the border is wide open. Our border patrol people...
Well, it's wide open for Muslims, too, coming in for terrorism, because we go to real war, which is pending with Israel against all the Muslim nations around it. We're likely to see major terrorism and murder on our streets.
Well, that's exactly what the point I was about to make, is that we don't know who else is coming across the border. Well, we do know who else is coming across the border, because Border Patrol agents have said that prior to this time, they were apprehending people from Yemen, people from Somalia, people from Iran that were coming across the border, but they figured they were only getting 1 out of 10. Now they're probably not getting 1 out of 100. So You're having cells set up all throughout the country right now. We don't know what they're bringing with them. We do know that in Mexico, in the last couple of months, there have been 2 major thefts of radioactive material. This was industrial or medical grade material. But you can't make a nuclear bomb with that, but what you can do is make a dirty bomb. And a dirty bomb, basically, you glue this stuff to some C4, you set it off, it kills anybody that's within range of the blast, but then it also spreads this radioactive material out, and anybody it touches is eventually going to die. But the whole area of a city
can't be
will have to be torn down.
Right. I was an expert working with Reserve Admiral John Hughes in Operation Top Off and Dark Winter with the federal government in 97. And we did a simulation in Federal Center downtown Denver with what would happen if a dirty bomb went off. And basically, you can't decon. You have to destroy and bury the buildings. And anybody that was contaminated, because these are called sticky bombs or dirty bombs that have glue on them, glue bombs, you can't decontaminate them. Doesn't matter how many times you shower them. Even if you strip their skin off, it's gone down to their lungs or other tissues, and there's heavy radioisotopes like cobalt-60, you're done. You're basically, at some point, you're going to develop cancer or you're going to die. That's just the way it is.
And,
it's really bad stuff like plutonium.
We don't know what they have, but we do know they're here, and we do know they're setting up cells. There was one cell that was isolated, and this was a couple of years ago, in Houston, Texas. Well, it disappeared. We don't know where they went, but they're still in the country. So the potential for terrorism here is dramatically increasing, and we have no control over our southern border. Obama's not going to do anything. That's why we're happy that at least Rick Perry is making a move at this point.
Exactly. Now, of course, when Rick Perry does that, it's going to move that traffic to other states like California, Arizona, and New Mexico. In those states, if they don't get with the program, they're going to get flooded because there's no evidence whatsoever. They're sending alternative media statements down to Nicaragua and Guatemala. They're being basically told through the grapevine, don't worry, the flood isn't being stopped, and they're not turning you away, and they're busting these kids, and even when they're properly not decontaminated, deloused. I mean, even when they ended up to the death camps in Nazi Germany, the first thing they put is delousing powder on them. We don't see that even here. What we do is inadequate care. We have people with resistant TB, with swine flu, with other bugs in them, and I think that they need to be treated, as Rick Perry says, more humanely. If they're true refugees, we need to treat them like true refugees. And why would a parent drop a child off that's underage when they themselves, if they came with the child, if there's a true refugee status, including ones that we're creating? Because I think, honestly, the reports I have are pretty disgusting, that the CIA directly is involved with killing native males in Guatemala. So they're creating the crisis because they want the broken border. Now, maybe what they want is they want a level of terrorism so they can really clamp down society. Shut down the internet so programs like this don't happen. Make sure that you have to show your papers, please. Everybody who goes and has to show biometric retinal scans, terrorist body scans with them on every pole in every area of the city. Electronic money, no more currency in your pocket or your bank account. It's all under their control. I mean, it really is crazy. But people have to understand, where's this going? It's going toward martial law. That's why Obama's doing it. He's preparing the groundwork for martial law in America. Welcome back. And Michael, give us the latest information on what's going to happen next, because we want to hear how the articles of impeachment are moving in Congress and the special committees. What's the next step so we can get this monster out of the White House and we can stop the United Nations from trying to take over our country?
Well, the articles of impeachment that are being considered by the House Judiciary Committee, and we confirm that they are in the hands of the House Judiciary Committee. This is the version of them that I wrote and published on my blog back in February, and people can go to my
Right.
blog and read them, or they can go to usjf.net, United States Justice Foundation website, and they can read them there. Now, in the next 48 hours, I am going, because this was back in February, we've had a lot happen since then. We've had the Bergdahl situation, where the president traded 5 high-level Taliban terrorists for 1 U.S. Army deserter, and put Americans in danger all around the world by doing that. We've had the border crisis. We've had more stuff come out on the IRS. We've had the VA crisis has just been exploding. And so I have drawn up...
And Fast and Furious, which, of course, you know that Holder and Obama were collaborating on, of course.
Well, I've drawn up these additional articles of impeachment that I'll be posting on my blog in the next 48 hours and sending on to the House members. Now, people need to also send copies to their House members from them, because that way we know that they'll get, when it's from a constituent, you know they're going to read them more carefully. And so we're going to be putting these more additional articles out there, and I don't think anything's going to happen prior to the election. It just isn't time. But I think there's a good possibility that once the election takes place, and maybe the Republicans control the Senate and the Republicans maintain control of the House, I think the lame duck Congress, the House of Representatives, will vote out the articles of impeachment before the new House of Representatives takes office. And I think that is a good probability of that happening. At that point, special prosecutors will be appointed by the House that will have access to things they don't have access to right now. The House doesn't. And that is like the Operation Fast and Furious documents that Obama says he won't release because of executive privilege. Impeachment proceeding, you can cut through that. Also, you have the situation with the survivors of Benghazi, who they have been refusing to let them be interviewed by House members or by members of the news media. If you have a special prosecutor in a criminal prosecution, which essentially that's what impeachment is, then those special prosecutors will be able to depose all of the people that have been hidden on the Benghazi scandal that reveal a lot of information. So that's where we're going. Even if we don't ultimately get a conviction in the Senate, I think there's a possibility that we will, because I think so much will come out that Democratic senators up for re-election in 2016 will be forced to vote to remove Obama from office. But even if
if they don't vote, they're going to kill themselves in the election,
and slow down what he's doing, because he's not going to have time to continue to violate our Constitution on a daily basis if he's trying to cover his own rear end and keep from being removed from office.
Exactly. In other words, at the very least, it's going to prevent him from doing further things. The next step is, as the Senate collaborates, we're going to end up removing him from office. And we also want to find out and repair what was done. For example, Benghazi, they gave man-pads, surface-to-air missiles. Recently, he gave 74 Stinger missiles to the ISIS people. These are the terrorists that are opposing the government we put in place, Mr. Maliki, the current president of Iraq. The ISIS people we think are directly involved with killing these 3 Israeli teenagers. Instead of doing things that I think are rational, reasonable, we don't even monitor and control the Israelis, and I'm sure they give fits to the Joint Chiefs. What they should have done 20 years ago was close off these tunnels where all this missiles and other weapons are coming in, rather than going through civilian areas and killing people, which when you get into a big city, what do you expect is going to happen? You're going to have a firefight in a city and people are going to die. The same thing goes on with these terrorists. I mean, they're coming in from the south, whether they're Iran or Yemen. If you have a flood, you're not going to have a lot of people who are opportunists, whether they're drug dealers or gang members or, people that are making a lot of money shipping human beings. And, of course, what's going on? Who's got paid off in the Mexican government that allowed them to get a 72-hour permission to cross the Mexican territory? That's a long travel. 1,000 miles to travel from the Guatemalan border all the way through to the Rio Grande River? And we're seeing babies wash up on the shore. This isn't rational. We create a crisis, which Obama does. Then they have their solution for the crisis, which is to destroy your border. Then they infuse the nation with terrorists while we have the humanitarian thing that confuses the issue of real refugees. But then we don't have them accompanied by their parent. I mean, at the very least, the Guatemalan or Nicaraguan government should grab their parent and say, where are you? Why are you coming here without, you're dropping your kid off and you're still in your own country? It's like, that doesn't even make sense. I mean, if it was really that dangerous, why are they going back to their village? Doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, you've got a lot of people are sending their kids here because, of course, Obama granted a form of amnesty to the so-called dream kids which the DREAM Act was not passed by Congress, but Obama did it unilaterally, which is a violation of the Constitution and a violation of his oath of office. But the people in Central America are being told, send your kids, and they will not be deported. And, of course, the idea is then, once they have not been deported, then the parents can come in. And Obama will grant amnesty to all the kids. And the whole idea behind his amnesty proposal, and this is what was proposed in the so-called immigration reform business, was that they were going to grant amnesty to the 11 million illegals already here and to all their family members, regardless of where they lived. So you were looking at 30 million people when these people got amnesty. And they brought all their relatives. We're talking about aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, children, all of their relatives in. You were going to have 30 million undocumented Democrats here in this country who would then be put on the fast track to get citizenship and be able to vote, would turn states like Texas from a red state to a blue state, and the same with Arizona. All this is part of the plan. Now Obama sees, well, I take all these kids in here, and because of the backlog in the immigration courts, it will be years before they can be deported. They will be taken care of at taxpayer expense, and as soon as I can, I'm going to issue an executive order granting all of them amnesty, and then bring all their parents in, and so you're going to have 3 or 4 million people coming in here. And see, that's all part of the whole game plan here, is to totally change the structure of the United States of America, change us from a constitutional republic to what amounts to being a banana republic.
Exactly. But, of course, that's what his purpose is, and it's to destroy to have I call a gruel class, a class totally dependent on handouts from the federal government, as I say, increase the takers from the makers ratio. And what it also means, too, is the United Nations and these corporations with their functionaries would make all the rule changes, and it wouldn't be our Congress or Senate anymore, or even a future president. We'd actually have a country now would be totally subservient to a massive amount of people that would be completely dependent on the federal government for handouts. Plus, they wouldn't be integrated to be real Americans because they wouldn't have learned the Constitution, the language, etc. We'd have almost like a metastatic infiltration from other countries, and we're not just talking about Central and South America. We're talking about the Middle East, because Obama's intention was to have a massive Muslim immigration into the United States. That's his intention. Massive immigration of many millions. And I don't think we can tell the difference necessarily whether they're from Central South America or from Yemen. I don't think they can tell just looking at them. It's going to be a real problem. Yeah. Come back, and we have Michael Connolly. Michael, that last statement, I want you to repeat that, please. And if they want to contact you, I want to repeat the websites. It's usjf.net. usjf.net is the main website. The blog is Michael Connolly, MichaelConnelly.jigsy, JIGSY.com. That's your blog site. And, of course, you have the blog regarding the latest articles of impeachment, information regarding the immigration crisis at the border. And if they want to contact you by email, it's michael@usjfmail.com. Or are those all correct?
usjfmail.net.
.net. Let me get it correct.
Right.
So usjf.net. Okay. So, Michael, we have those issues. What other issues are kind of percolating, not only with the federal government, but in general? We have an impending economic crash. The latest actions by Obama against Russia increases the chance of us literally accelerating toward World War III. We have the war on drugs has ended because it was collaborative with Russia stopping the drugs coming out of Afghanistan, which is killing not only Russian children, young people, but also here in America and the West. We have Russia now spearheading with the meeting last week, the meeting of the BRICS nations to actually destroy the hegemony of the Federal Reserve System, which, to be honest with you, maybe needs to be destroyed because according to our money should be back to our U.S. Treasury. What's going on now is that Obama is doing everything to destroy the economic system and bring us into the brink of war and destroy our borders. I mean, people say he's a failure. I think he's a massive success. He's actually been sent as a guided missile to destroy the nation of America and to break it up.
Well, we have just one crisis after another happening, and one of the components of all of this, in order for Obama to ultimately be successful and make himself dictator for life and to destroy the constitutional republic, one of the major components is to disarm the American public. And we've talked about this on the show before. The first element to be disarmed are the American veterans. 23 million of us out there. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I have two sons in the Army. We all took the same oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Obama and Eric Holder and Nancy Pelosi essentially took that same oath, but they violate it. They don't believe in it. The veterans do. So the VA is moving against veterans to disarm them. At the USJF, we have filed suit against the VA and been successful on getting information that they wouldn't give us after a Freedom of Information Act request. We got a lot of information about what they're doing. They're sending letters to veterans, and they're saying, you have 60 days to respond. We're going to declare you incompetent in your own financial affairs because of your physical or mental disabilities, and you have to prove you're competent. That violates the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, the Due Process Clause. And then they're telling veterans in the same letter, once we declare you incompetent, you can no longer own, purchase, possess, or transport firearms or ammunition. If you do, you're guilty of a felony. And they're
that's hard to believe, isn't it? When we deploy some of these people multiple... Yeah. It's quite hard to believe when we deploy our veterans for multiple tours of duty in dangerous areas. They come back here with physical and mental injuries, and then they get treated like they're subhuman and not even able to protect themselves without having their own right to bear arms here in America. It's what it is their skill sets. And I remember one of my friends who was in Delta Force, because I took care of Delta Force guys, and I remember one of them used a little sense of humor. He said, I said, you guys have got skill sets. And I said, you can take over a building with a dinner fork and a knife. We're not even talking about a sharp knife. We're talking about a butter knife. And he said, yeah. He said, so they don't definitely want you guys to have guns of any kind, whether it's a single shot, 30 caliber or any kind of gun. And he said, yeah, of course they don't. Because if the government does something really wrong, you want a guy that's a veteran training civilians that may have some ability to shoot because they can go hunting. And all of a sudden, in a matter of weeks, you trained up a giant army of many millions of people because the veterans are directly, not only have guns themselves, they can train other civilians to have a civilian militia. And that includes police, firefighters, veterans, basically anybody who can carry an arm and follow orders. And the federal government's freaked out by that because they know that the largest standing-on army in the world, in fact, larger than all the armies of the planet, is the American public, armed.
That's absolutely correct. We have 159,000 veterans now on the NICS list. That's the National Instant Criminal Background Check list. And 99.9% of them don't belong on there. The VA is putting them on that list or declaring them incompetent because they have minor PTSD issues. PTSD, by the way, is not even classified as a mental illness. Or they let their spouses pay the family bills, or they sometimes have been depressed from the loss of a buddy in combat. All of these are being used by the VA. And the criteria for being on the NICS list is to be a convicted felon, a known drug abuser, or adjudicated to be mentally ill to the point of being a danger to themselves or others. Adjudication means that there's a hearing before a judge or at least administrative judge where evidence is presented. Right. That was until 2009. Eric Holder is Attorney General. He decides to change the definition of adjudication in that instance and say that any federal employee at any level, even outside contractors, can declare veterans to be incompetent. So now we have contractors working for the Department of Defense, working for the VA, who instead of giving the veterans 60 days to respond, are saying we're going to declare you incompetent in 5 days. And all of this is violating the constitutional rights of veterans. We are preparing to file another lawsuit. We filed last week 4 new Freedom of Information Act requests, one to the VA, one to the FBI, because the FBI is refusing to remove veterans even when they would get the incompetency ruling reversed, which is rare, but refusing to remove them to the NICS list even then. You got the Department of Defense using independent contractors. You got the VA appointing fiduciaries who work for the VA or used to. They're stealing veterans' money. And then you have the Department of Homeland Security blanketly putting all veterans on the list of potential domestic terrorists. So we've got Freedom of Information Act requests have gone out to all of these departments, and we are preparing the major lawsuit. We're finally getting to
this all comes right down from Obama, too, of course.
Forward.
Yeah, this all comes down from Obama, because Obama basically wants to make sure that veterans, when they return, get treated with the most disrespect possible.
Right, exactly.
Rather than being treated with...
he doesn't like the veterans. He doesn't like the military. He's made that clear. I mean, look when he used the shutdown of the federal government to close off the World War II memorial and put up barricades to keep World War II veterans from visiting their own memorial, when, in fact, that is an open memorial. You don't have a guards or security to go through to get in that memorial. There was no cost to be leaving that memorial open, but he used that as an excuse to shut it down. And of course, the World War II veterans and their families just broke down the barricades. That should give him a signal right there that the veterans are about fed up. And more veterans are being hammered. If you're a veteran out there and some of this is happening to you, or you're not getting treatment from the VA, contact me at michael@usjfmail.net. And we are representing veterans and their families for free. There's no charge. We're raising our money independently. If you want to donate to help our veterans, go to usjf.net and find out how you can donate. And
there's a donate button right there, and of course
we need to raise about $250 million.
And by the way, this affects other countries, so it doesn't matter if you're in Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. If America goes down the toilet, it means that the rulers of the United Nations will completely enslave every nation on earth. America is basically the doorstop for the New World Order. If literally America goes down, countries like Canada, Mexico, anywhere else in the world is going to suffer, including China and Russia. Right now, the treatment of China and Russia, I think, are obscene by America. Instead of working out a deal to reduce pollution as part of things and making sure that the worker occupational rights are better in China, we don't make a deal that will increase business and also reduce pollution. We don't make a deal with Russia to deal with the drug trade and expand their business. No, we actually make them out to be terrorists and even say foolish things like they shot down that Malaysian flight that strayed into airspace. Was already closed, by the way, by the Ukrainian government, even in Kiev. That flight had no business being in that area. We have lots of proof that there was an Israeli F-15 jet that took that flight out with an air-to-air missile, and that there is no alternative explanation that can explain what exactly happened, including that. Welcome back, and it's interesting what's going on. The Drudge Report is great for popping up news items right away. Lots of other news we'll talk about in hour number 3. Michael, in this last segment, let's talk about some of the latest blogs you put on your michaelconnelly.jigsy.com website, and of course it's usjf.net. The title of your latest is A Victory, which is the article from yesterday, and we talked about this victory, which is a partial victory we have. Legal alert on the impeachment, which is June 10th. That article is posted up there as well. Of course, May 12th, it's not a war article. Pick out some of the top topics that you think people need to be aware of and how they can get involved so that we can get our constitutional republic back. There's a lot of, I call, people that get confused on the issues here, whether it's immigration, which needs to be streamlined, obviously. It's too bureaucratic and too expensive. But it also needs to make sure people are vetted so they don't get into the country if they're criminals, even if they've served a term of or more in our U.S. military that came from Nicaragua and these other countries. We have a policy, basically, that didn't build the fence, although Obama continues to tell us, even when he's lying, that they finished building the fence. There's no fence. There's no real border, and they tell the border guards to stand down. So a lot of them have quit. We don't have a situation where we're even dealing properly with the refugees. There's the 2 refugees in the air-conditioned buses. Have guards on the buses so that they don't end up dying trying to get here. But don't allow them to be on death trains so the babies end up dying either on the train or trying to cross the Rio Grande River. We don't have a humane way of approaching any of these things, or even a rational way to prevent criminals from coming into our country. What I see happening is neither streamlined, nor humane, nor rational, nor even the idea that you have a nation anymore, because if you don't have a border, you don't have a nation. You just have a place in a territory for the globalist bankers to bilk the people of even more money and steal our liberties.
Yeah, well, like Ronald Reagan said, a nation without borders is not a nation. And that's essentially what you're saying is correct. And, we just have this situation where now there's being reported that illegal immigrants are being released on their own recognizance and later allowed to board and travel commercial airliners by simply showing their notice to appear forms. Now, the notice to appear form is for them to appear before an immigration court sometime, and I can print those off of the Internet today. And I can fill those out, and I could go to the Dallas airport if I'm a terrorist, and I can board that plane with no other information, no picture ID, no passport. I can board that plane. And, this is setting us up for an act of terrorism on our airlines. You and I can't do this. American citizens can't board a plane without picture IDs. But now the people who have already broken our laws by coming into this country can do so. That's one of the things I'm going to be writing about on my blog. My blog is on the Constitution. And by the way, if people go to that website where my blog is, they can also read or get the link to my radio show, which is broadcast live at 4 o'clock on Wednesdays Eastern Time. But then we talk about the Constitution for an hour, and then it's archived so people can listen to it on the Internet anytime they want to. And I have special guests on there, like Kevin Freeman, Dr. Kevin Freeman, and I've had Richard Mack of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. I have had Larry Pratt of Gun Owners of America, all of who are good friends of mine. People can listen in on my show. You can also find out, by the way, about the books I've written. One of them, The Mortarman, about my dad's unit during World War II, has become a bestseller on Amazon, selling about 1,000 copies a month. And then my novel, Amayeli, A Story of America, is a patriotic novel and has recently been discovered by the left, and they are viciously attacking it on Amazon pages, for example, that I'm a gun nut, that I'm saying that the American people should own weapons so they can defend themselves against tyranny, and that I'm a racist because I say bad things about the communist Chinese. I love it. I love it when they go nuts like that, because that means I'm really rubbing them the wrong way. But I'm going to continue to be writing about all of these issues on my blog, and the United States Justice Foundation is going to be working on these issues. Again, if you're a veteran out there, contact me at michael@usjfmail.net, because we're going to be representing veterans for free. We have dozens that we're working with all over the country already, and we have had some minor successes, but we're going after the federal government on a major basis here. We want to file a suit on behalf of one or more veterans to get injunctive relief and basically stop the VA, stop the Department of Defense, stop the FBI, and stop the Department of Homeland Security from trying to shut up veterans and disarm veterans, because that's the critical one here. And then we're going to be pushing for the articles of impeachment. People need to get involved. We showed this last 10 days that we can influence the governor of Texas to deploy the National Guard, and we can also influence members of the Senate or the House of Representatives to impeach Obama, and members of the Senate to convict him. So keep going to my blog and keep going to the USJF website and keep up with what's going on. And, we need to do this together. We cannot allow Obama to go 2 more years unchecked. If this election takes place,
now, what's the timeline?
He's not impeached. If he's not impeached, then we're done. By 2016, there won't even be a free election. We have to impeach him, because that will slow him down and stop him.
Yeah, Michael, let's war game about the timeline. The first thing is, you had several members of Congress that have talked about the articles of impeachment. You sent them. How likely is it between now and, say, the end of summer that they're going to actually table that before the committee so things will start rolling?
Well, it's actually before the committee now. We have confirmed within the last 3 weeks that the articles of impeachment I drew up in February and posted on my blog, and we sent to members of Congress. At least one member of Congress, and we think more, have actually submitted those to the House Judiciary Committee. The House Judiciary Committee staff has confirmed, when they've talked to people on the phone, they've called them about it, to confirm they do have the articles, they are being considered, and they want to do it right, and they're encouraging people to contact their members of Congress and urge them to get this voted out of the House Judiciary Committee. Now, because the time is short between now and the House adjourning before the election in November, I don't think it'll happen before the election, but I think there's a good possibility if the groundwork is laid that it could be done right after the election, before the new House even takes office. They can vote these articles of impeachment at that point, appoint these special prosecutors.
Yeah, do you think that will happen between then and Christmas, or after in the new year 2015?
I think it can happen between now and Christmas.
Okay, so could be a very crazy Christmas. I call the nightmare before Christmas for Obama. And that means also the Senate's going to be scrambling because they'll have less than a year before the 2016 elections to kind of really plan this, because by the spring, this will be before the Senate committee, and they either have to do it or they're going to commit political suicide. And we've heard many reports that many of the Democrats don't want to campaign with Obama. They want his money, but they don't want him to campaign because he has such a negative impression from the public. Now, a lot of people will mislead, from the media that he still has a popularity in the 40% range. I think that they have very strange statistics. I really don't think that the popularity is anywhere near that. I think that Obama, basically, people have the cringe factor in the Democratic Party, and they know that if they campaign with him, they're very unlikely to be elected. And their own polls, basically, the Democratic Party know that Obama is killing the party. They're afraid to move forward. I don't understand whether the Republicans have been afraid for the last few years to impeach Obama. Since he's in the second term, he's just done everything on hyperdrive to destroy the nation. I mean, and he shows no respect whatsoever. In fact, he said to a congressperson this last week, when they're having a dialogue, if you don't like what I'm doing, sue me. That's his actual words to the congressperson.
Well, at the press conference this morning by his press secretary, after the Court of Appeals in D.C. had declared parts of Obamacare unconstitutional, the press secretary said, well, we don't agree with that ruling, so we're not going to abide by it. So the man
but the thing is that
he can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Now, here we have a major court, and this is posted up on Drudge. We'll talk about it in the third hour, perhaps even this next hour. We'll talk about that, because this is going to really hit really hard the whole idea that Obama's going to be able to do whatever he pleases. Because that court ruling shows the subsidies are illegal. And that's the appeals court rejects the Obama's, it's a potentially crippling blow, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in the Washington Post. Federal appeals court issues contradictory rulings on health care law subsidies. And, of course, they try to spin it. You can spin it all you want. It's not going to work. Two federal appeals courts handed down the contradictory rulings Tuesday on legality of the central part of the Affordable Care Act that provides insurance subsidies to millions of Americans in 36 states. That means it kills it. Kills the bill. Wow. That's a big deal.